Yeah. Before we begin with the automation with the Zabbix, I believe it's always important to give a brief introduction of who I'm actually am to sit here and talk about the Zabbix and about automation and all sort of different technical stuff about the monitoring and the trendy word nowadays like observability and stuff like that. So most of you, I'm kind of sure already know me. Mostly, I believe because of my YouTube videos. So I'm Dmitry Lambert, and I do have a YouTube channel which is 99% about Zabbix and monitoring. At this point, we have something around like 150 videos of different tutorials and different how-to manuals, how to do this and that inside of Zabbix and how to fix some common mistakes and so on. A lot of valuable information, completely free, available for everyone. Just at this point, the channel is like 7 years old, so it does make sense to say like be careful how old is the video that you are watching, because when I started that, I think there was like Zabbix 4 dot something. Out there. So it is possible that some of the videos are like a bit outdated. The main concept remains the same, but the front end might look different and so on. And additionally to like my YouTube career of being like a Zabbix influencer and stuff like that, I also happens to be worked in Zabbix itself in Riga headquarters. I worked there for almost 9 years. I think it was 8.5, something like that. And I could say like I went through the whole journey. I started as a technical support engineer, supporting all sort of different customers across the globe with very different setups and very different requirements. Starting with a Zabbix 3.0 back then, very very fast. Also became a Zabbix trainer, consultant, traveled across different countries to give trainings on a Zabbix and set up a lot of environments for our customers. And after being like 3 or 4 years as a technical guy, I'll then transferred to head of the customer support and later to head of product. So we're working also very heavily into what we know nowadays as Zabbix Cloud. Therefore, I guess we can say that I do have some experience with the Zabbix, and I've seen some setups and installations and how people use that and what could be some considered as the best practices. And we previously had a lot of webinars already with the InitMax. Let me try to open that right in the beginning. Um, InitMax webinars, professional webinars for free. So I will just show it here on the screen. If you are interested in more stuff, there's the initmax.com/webinars where you can sign up for all of the upcoming. So the next one is going to be Windows Server monitoring. Then I believe it's going to be still a time to talk about like how to install Zabbix 8.0, which is going to be the new LTS version of the Zabbix. And also important, if you happen to not have a time to join a webinar, there are also recordings available for everything that we're talking here. So a lot of good stuff. Do spend some time and check all of that out. And beginning with the topic that we have today is automation in Zabbix, which might come to the question like, why in the world do we even need automation in the monitoring? And I believe monitoring is like a very tricky topic, first of all, because like the scale and the scope of your monitoring and your Zabbix setup in this case is very much dependent on the scale of your imagination. If you look on this tool on a Zabbix as something that monitors like two my Windows servers, one Linux box, and two Cisco or whatever routers, it's always going to be a system that just does that and that's it, and maybe sends some email alerts to the admins when something goes wrong. But if you do use your imagination, Zabbix actually has a very wide set of tools and frameworks that allow you to automate a lot of different stuff and achieve a much more functional and better outcomes than just collecting some data and reporting on the problems. As example, like what we are losing and what are the consequences if we use it just for the basic purpose, only monitoring, like manual remediation slows incident resolution. Like if we rely only on, let's say we have an item, so we're monitoring the most basic use case, like status of the server, it's up or down, or service would be the better example. If we rely only on this item and then we have a trigger that is notifying us when the service is down, then we send email, let's say, to our administrator. And if that's a small company, like there's only one and it's outside of the working hours and he is somewhere in a gym or in a woods or whatever, and he's not available to his email, then he notices that after like 2 hours or something, then he rushes home because his laptop is left on a desk. Then while he opens that, he logs into the system, and the only thing that he needs to do is basically just systemctl start, and I don't know what's the service name, like httpd or something like that. While in the actual automation case, we could do that automatically. Like, of course, not always it's going to be working solution. Not always it's gonna help. As example, if there's some bug with a service or software and it's crashing and it's not working as it should, obviously automatically restarting the service is not gonna help. But I believe all of us can agree that in most cases it will help. So what we could do is like when we see that the service is not running, what we do is automatically with the functionality of the Zabbix, we try to start it, continue the monitoring, of course. And if we see that, okay, even after our attempts to automatically fix all of the problems, still not working, then it might be time to actually report to our administrator. And even if we talk about the reporting and notification to administrators, we can go much beyond just the regular email. We can integrate Zabbix with all sort of ticketing systems and not only also like a communication system, which is the second point. Like tickets often created manually in ITSM tools like ServiceNow or Jira, which is imagine again the typical operations at a company when okay, Zabbix is monitoring some service or some servers, and then again we have triggers, and trigger creates a problem event. So we see there's a problem, and someone from the NOC team is like, okay, so now there is an issue. Let me raise a ticket with our system administrator team. So they open the ServiceNow or a Jira, find the required project, create new, fill in all the information that hey, there was this problem with host XYZ, and trigger name is like that, and the last received value is like this, and all of that is going to take time. And in case of the downtime, especially if we talk about production systems, the time is very precious. So again, in this case, we could completely automate all of this workflow to create the tickets in the ticketing system so that Zabbix would do that automatically. Like as soon as the problem happens, ticket created in your ServiceNow system with all of the relevant information, like what type of host it is, what the host group, when the problem happened, what is the trigger, what is the severity, what are the latest data. And we can even include some, let's say, the most common troubleshooting steps on how to actually fix that and how to solve the problem. Repetitive operational tasks consume admin time. Sometimes, like, especially if we think about, okay, we have a monitoring and obviously most of our items and triggers are working through templates. So we have a template where we created our monitoring, which is applied to like hundreds or even thousands of the hosts. And then whenever the problem happens, like we might get also like 100 different problems, and let's say each of them is reporting exactly the same, like disk drive is full or some file is missing on a file system. And instead of admin going manually, I'm sorry if there's the background noise. Let me try to fix my dog of doing stuff. Okay, which is good. So instead of admin going manually through hundred of different hosts and trying to fix the same issue over and over and over again, once again, it is much better to just put all of this hustle on shoulders of the Zabbix and make sure that Zabbix will automatically do that. Human errors increase operational risks. In Of course, it depends, like from the company, from the policy, from the culture, but overall, in high performing environments and high performing companies, the biggest issue that might happen is the human error. And the more operations the human is doing, like creating a ticket, running some sort of the commands. Again, if we talk about the typical example when the file system is full, meaning that we need to delete some files from the file system to free it up, let's say, so that our database can continue to run. If we have a prepared automation and script that knows what exactly and where exactly it can delete on this server, very likely that everything is going to be fine. But if every time we rely that some sort of system administrator will SSH to the server, find something that he thinks it's safe to delete, sooner or later, something that should not be deleted actually will be deleted. Slow response leads to increased recovery time. As I mentioned with the example, like if our admin is somewhere not near the computer or not near the phone, we might just wait for an hour or two, or sometimes maybe even days if that's happening in Saturdays or Sundays, until someone can until we can get someone's attention to all of this stuff. How Zabbix enables automation. So the typical workflow of the Zabbix whenever we have it installed, so we have a Zabbix server, we have a front end, we have a database, we have all of the hosts created, different host groups, different items, update intervals, triggers, actions, and so on. So basically, the first step is that Zabbix is continuously monitoring our infrastructure metrics. And at this point, it doesn't even matter like what exactly it is monitoring, whether those are just some physical servers, routers, softwares, databases, data inside the databases, maybe some Java application, web pages, or it could be anything, right? So there's like no real limitation in terms of what Zabbix can monitor. Just depends on the particular use case. And then we have triggers, and simple definition of what the trigger actually in the meaning of the Zabbix is. It's definition of a problem. So we define that, okay, we're monitoring this, and if the values that we receive are matching this, it means that that's going to be a problem. When the problem happens, like one thing is that um, trigger creates a problem event. That's also a bit of confusing initially for the people, that it's not actually a trigger going to the problem state, and that's causes actions to execute. But trigger is creating a problem event, and then we have actions, and actions have a conditions. Let me actually show you something in the front end itself, so that it's more clear for you, hopefully. So we have some sort of the hosts, like Zabbix server as example, right? On this Zabbix server, we might have some items like aborted clients per second, doesn't really matter. And to these items, we have connected triggers, like here for aborted connections per second, we have a trigger, and trigger set here. So whenever this expression, like the last received value for the uptime is less than 10 minutes, that is going to create a problem event with the severity information. So it's a problem. It's something that we want to catch, but it's not very critical. So in most cases, like nothing dramatical is going to happen in terms of our automation. So what checks these conditions is alerts and actions, trigger actions. Here we can have as many actions as we want. Basically, whenever we create them, we need to add a conditions and choose like the tag value or the tag name, or select that, okay, we're interested only in Zabbix server host, and what else, like trigger, maybe some specific. And when we define the conditions for the actions, we can also specify what is going to happen and what is going to happen when the problem happens. Then we can define multiple different steps of escalation. So first thing, as soon as the problem happens, we want to, let's say, create a ticket just for having statistics and analytics of all of the issues that happened. Then we could try to run automated command to try to fix the issue. If the issue is still not fixed after 20 minutes, we will send an email to our admin. If it's still not fixed after 1 hour, we can call him, as example, or send a SMS text message, or send him message in WhatsApp, and stuff like that, right? So operations can execute scripts, webhooks, or commands. So we have like all this scope of all sort of different things that we can do. Um, and our task is to operate all of the tool set, making sure that we can achieve our desired result as fast as possible. And the desired result in most cases is going to be like resolve the issue. And which kind of brings us to the conclusion that Zabbix is not only a monitoring tool, it is also an automation platform. And which again leads to another conclusion that Zabbix is as powerful as basically your imagination is on how you are working with it. Because one thing, like whenever traveling and visiting all sort of different conferences and people who are interested in monitoring, many people think that Zabbix is just a network monitoring tool, but it's so much beyond that, right? You can monitor literally anything and whatever that can return some sort of the data, even if it's not connected to internet or whatever. You can add some cameras, read the screen, make a pictures, read something from the pictures. Like nowadays, especially um, in the era of AI, there's very little of constraints in terms of technical tool sets, so we can kind of achieve anything that we can figure out. And as long as we can figure out something, it's also going to be possible to bring it inside a Zabbix. And using all of the existing tools, we can also use all sort of different automations and integrations to connect Zabbix together with some other platforms, other tools, which essentially gets us to the state when our Zabbix is like just a huge platform that is doing quite a lot for our business and our environment. If we talk about available automation and scripting types inside of Zabbix, there's kind of like a couple of them. It's more than just one. And the first thing that we kind of can distinguish them is in a manual operations and manual event actions. So as example, again, let me bring uh, my front end. So here it is. So if, as example, we talk about the manual events, like the one of the first one is the manual host action, which means that previously we're in the data collection hosts, and that's the place where we do all of the configuration. So we have a Zabbix server here. We cannot really execute scripts from here, but we can create new items, triggers, and so on. But if we talk about the scripts and automation, we usually talk about like the monitoring section. So if, as example, we're going to go to the monitoring hosts, then okay, we can check like Amsterdam, and when we click here, we have access to the script section. And the default ones are the detect operating system, ping, traceroute, and we can also check like CPU load as example. So if we try to check ping, unknown, okay, this is a bad host. But essentially, like if we have some sort of the host here which has the host interface, so that we have IP address, we can run these scripts to one thing to get some sort of the data from the hosts, like the ping or trace route or just availability. And the second thing, we also can do something on the host, like we can start a service or execute some sort of the file or run some query to the database or whatever, again, is our imagination. And the second one is the manual event action, when we basically can go to the monitoring problems and also execute scripts on our problems that were generated from the triggers. Or like problems would be more scoped to the issue we're having. Like if we see that, okay, the service HTTPD is not running, then we know that we need to start this HTTPD. But if we're running like specifically on the host, then it's more like a high level target of our execution where we can do all sort of different stuff. And automatic remediation is like actions, which is one of the most common cases that we also talked here, like in alerts, actions, trigger actions. So for every time when we are executing some sort of operations, we can define here so that instead of sending just a message, we can, as example, restart Apache. And all of these scripts are in here, alerts, scripts. And here we should find like restart Apache. And here we have a command. So that's just the typical terminal command for if you would SSH to the system. If you would receive a problem from your trigger saying that, hey, Apache is not running on the server, Zabbix server or whatever, this is the kind of exact command that you would log in through the SSH to the server and execute it. But instead, like you create a script in the Zabbix frontend, you define that type is script. It's going to be executed on the Zabbix server and added to the action so that whenever the problem happens, the script is going to be executed automatically. Of course, it's important to match script and the actual action with the conditions. Like if we monitor uptime of the host and we notice that okay, our Linux server is down, obviously we don't want to try to restart Apache, right? It doesn't really make sense. So we always need to catch a proper like conditions, what a problem we have and what is the operation, how we're going to try to solve that. And external integrations like ServiceNow, Jira, Slack, custom APIs, those would be essentially the webhooks. So mostly for the messaging, if by default here again, if we go into the actions, trigger actions, if we create a new operation. So we have like send message, which would be by default, it would send like to your email, but we could also like use Jira or Teams or Discord or whatever else. Like by default, whenever you install the Zabbix, if you would go to GitHub, let me actually show you GitHub Zabbix. So that's the official one available for everyone, right? And here we have folder templates and media. And here are all the out of the box available webhooks integrations with the Zabbix that you can use, that you can just download, import as a webhook, and then use inside your actions. Like you can, as example, send your notifications to the Discord. You can include information about not only like a message, but also the visual representation. You can include also some data from the problem events and so on and so on. You can create a tickets in a Jira, Mantis, Mattermost, Teams, OTRS, Community Edition only, Pushover, which is also kind of famous, Signal, Slack, Telegram, of course. So quite a lot. And if you cannot find like what you're actually looking here, you can always create your own. And as I said, like nowadays in the era of AI, it's a matter of how much time it's going to take us, whether we can do that in one evening or we're going to need like 2 days. And you don't need like hundreds or thousands of dollars. It's enough to have like a $20 subscription to your favorite AI platform, maybe, I don't know, Google Gemini or or Cloud Code or ChatGPT. And if you know what you need, you could say like, "Hey, I have this system. I want my alerts to end up in this system." Again, based on your knowledge and experience in those platforms, it's probably a question of how many evenings it's going to take. Then, whenever we talk about like, in this case, maybe not so much about automation, but the scripting, it's definitely data preprocessing. Because again, let me bring back Zabbix here for this case. Whenever we go to like data host items and we create a new item, there is a tab preprocessing, and there are a couple like built-in preprocessing types. Like we can do the simple change, or SNMP, walk to value, CSV to JSON, and replace and regular expression, and so on and so on. But I guess the most powerful is JavaScript, which kind of essentially you just choose the JavaScript, and there you go. You have your window where you can write your JavaScript, what you want to do with the data, and that's it. Like as example, you receive the raw data that your item receives is just some gibberish string and maybe numbers, but you know that there is some sort of the pattern, so that you write the JavaScript and essentially end up with receiving the meaningful data on which you can build also your triggers. And handy here would come also like AI pre-processing a system, which is a custom module developed by the InitMax. They also happens to have a video about it, and it's available in the wiki page. I'm going to show you all that stuff in the end of this webinar. So with this, you can basically use the power of LLM to say like, okay, this is the value that I receive. This is how I want it to look. Do the magic. And AI does the magic. And in like the most complex cases, when you really need to do some extreme transformation of the data, it will write JavaScript itself. And like you don't need to write any code, you don't need to even understand it. Just ask what you need and click add, and it's going to be done. And external scripts, which are, I think those are like nowadays used very, very rarely. When I just started to work in a Zabbix, external scripts were a very frequent answer in the technical demos whenever some customers came and wanted to explore the options of whether or not Zabbix can fit their needs. Because we always had questions like, can Zabbix monitor XYZ? And in most cases, the answer was yes, but you will need to write the script that will actually gonna do the monitoring, that will connect to that external API endpoint and do the authentication, collect the data, and then you can pass this data to the Zabbix. Nowadays, it is not needed so much anymore. Like you can do a lot of stuff using the native functionality of the Zabbix from the front end, but still might be some cases when you want to have external script to do some, probably some deeper logic, maybe communication between multiple systems, so that in the end you get some magic value, which then you can just bring inside the Zabbix. So there's still an option to use it, but it's definitely not as popular as it used to be. So going deeper into front-end scripting, what is a front-end script? And front-end scripts are executed directly from the Zabbix front-end. Those are exactly the ones that I showed you here, from like monitoring hosts. And whenever you click on the host, you get all of those scripts. Where to create them? In the alerts script. So we'll get to this in a couple of seconds. So they allow administrators to perform operational tasks directly from host view and the problem view. So the monitoring hosts and monitoring problems, and also from the dashboards. Like if you have a dashboard with I don't have it here right now on the dashboard, but if you have, as example, the widget that shows like problems, how many problems you have on a host, and you have this host name, you will still be able to click on it and execute some of the front end scripts that you actually have. Typical use cases include like manual remediation of a problem. Again, you received some problem events, so your trigger fired.